Hello, welcome to Legally Speaking. I'm your host, Sophia Haynes. Legally Speaking is a public service of You and the Law, a nonprofit whose mission is to provide information and resources to empower you in your legal affairs. Although we provide legal information, it is no way intended to be legal advice. So if you have an issue, make sure you retain the services of a licensed, qualified attorney. Today we're talking about nonprofits and how to start nonprofits and exactly what a nonprofit is. We have a lot of individuals out there that want to start a nonprofit organization, but they don't necessarily know what a nonprofit is and how it would benefit or not benefit them. So we invited our guest, Ms. Sheila Duren, to come in to talk to us about nonprofit organizations and to give us some information on how we can get some great nonprofits started. Welcome, Ms. Duren.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me today.
We appreciate you being here and sharing your information with the audience. Could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, as you stated, my name is Sheila Duren. I've been in nonprofit organizations, been involved with them over 20 years. Started out through the church and then through the Atlanta Housing Authority, working on social services, and then went from there to Clark Atlanta University as a program director and grants administrator, and then went from there to running a nonprofit for a church that I was attending about 12 or 13 years ago.
Okay, so it sounds like you have been in the ins and outs of that whole nonprofit world.
From beginning to still going through.
Oh, great. So, for those of us who don't know, what exactly is a nonprofit organization?
Well, a nonprofit is just that it says it is an organization that does not profit from its income. The income that it generates is put back into programming, put back into staffing, put back into material and supplies.
Okay, and what is the primary purpose of a nonprofit?
The primary purpose of a nonprofit is to serve and benefit the community. If you look at what a for-profit is, a for-profit generates income and then pays out a dividend or pays out an owner at the end of a set period of time. But a nonprofit generates income. A lot of people think that a nonprofit doesn't get income, but a nonprofit does have to generate income, but that income is not profited by anybody or any individual. So that money that you generate is used to provide services to the community or services to a particular population or a particular thing.
Okay, so what types of organizations are typically nonprofit?
Usually churches, associations, fraternities, sororities, hospitals, schools, a number of things where they are benefiting a specific segment of a population or a specific initiative or anything where you're generally going to have some type of board or something that kind of oversees what you're doing, would provide services for the community.
And so it's typically some benefit given back to the community, legal, medical, social, something along those lines?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so let's talk about how are they formed? What typically is the process for forming a nonprofit? Well, let me ask you this. Before I decide, I have an idea and a service I want to provide to the community, and I'm okay with all the money flowing back to the organization so I can provide more services. What should I be thinking about, researching, whatever, to decide if nonprofit is best for my idea, or if I should even be doing a nonprofit organization for the idea that I have?
Well, generally, the way I suggest you do it, and there is schools of thought that have you start with your idea and then generate a buzz and get people involved. But I have found from past experience that if you back into it in the process of doing what you need to do to organize that organization, you're either going to get more gung-ho about it or you're going to say, this is not for me. Generally, you have to have people that are interested. You cannot run a nonprofit by yourself. You can't you can't even start a nonprofit by yourself. Most of the time, nonprofits are generated through churches because of some of the services that they provide to their congregation or to the community at large. or it's a group of people that have come together over an idea or something that's happened in the news or something like that. But in the process of doing that, if your idea does not generate concern or involvement from other people, then you don't need to start a 501c3, because you're going to need you need that folk, you need that person.
So you need to find a need to fill.
You need to find a need, but you also have to find people that are committed to helping you to resolve that need or address that need. And if you cannot generate the buzz, and a lot of people,
or an interest,
a lot of people, even though they don't generate the interest in the beginning, they keep on moving forward. But at some point, if you have not been able to pull other people to become involved in what it is you want to do or what service you want to provide, then you may not need to start a nonprofit.
And why is that important?
Because you have to have you have to have people to help you. You have to have a board, and you have to have a board that's committed in time and in service. And if you can't generate that, you cannot run a nonprofit by yourself.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because we were talking about the whole forming thing. You mentioned a board, so I'm assuming you're talking about a board of directors.
Right.
Okay, so what is their role? What is their function? And what should I be looking for in people to serve on a particular nonprofit board?
Well, your board serves as the let's say the board is responsible for overseeing the organization, not the day-to-day operations, but the big picture,
like policies
and procedures, fiscal management, hiring the director, those type of things. And when you're looking for a board, you want people. If for example, your service is affordable housing, you want to do something to address the housing issue, workforce housing, then you're going to look for people who are involved in some form of housing development, whether it be contractors, developers, lenders, banks, that kind of thing. So you want people who have similar interests, who understand what the service is that you're trying to provide, understand the needs that the clients have, and have a sense of what kind of monies or resources you're going to need to address those issues. And then you also need people who may not have that type of experience, but the expertise that they have matches the services that you provide, like attorneys, because you're going to be dealing with contracts, you're going to be dealing with negotiations, accountants, because very, very heavily involved in financing and auditing and record keeping, and depending on what your service is, you want some bankers, you want some lenders, and once you identify that kind of service and you separate them, then you're looking for people who are committed to be involved. And when I say committed, they're going to attend the monthly meetings. They're going to attend and participate in the committee meetings. They're going to prepare for the meetings. A lot of times you're going to have events that you need the support of your board. So you want them committed to participate. You want people who, in the area of expertise that they have, that they're connected in the community.
Now, why is that important?
Well, you need people that can bring resources. A lot of people don't think about that when they put people together on their board, but you need people that are going to bring resources, whether that's monetary resources or sponsorships or donations or something. But you need people who can bring resources, who are, when you say that name, this person is on my board, people will respond. You also need people who are integrous. You won't want somebody on your board that's under investigation for anything, or when people hear that and they say, "Oh, well, they're connected with that board." I don't know.
It's a reflection of the organization.
I may not. I don't know if I want to participate with that board. So those are the kind of things that you're looking for, and a lot of times when you're initially getting started, usually most people, it's family members. It's you, your friend, a couple of family members that serve as that startup board. But if you're going to grow and expand and implement programs and services, if you're going to eventually apply for a 501c3, you have to have people other than your family members and friends on that board.
Okay, so let's just talk about how we form it. So what documents go in play for us to do that? What is the whole process?
Well, you first have to organize a business, because because a nonprofit is a business, and a lot of people don't look at it that way. In a lot of ways, to me, I look at it almost like a ministry, because of the services that you're going to provide. But even with a ministry or church, or as some people might look at a ministry as a church, it still is a business, and it has to be run with business principles. And so you have to organize a business, you have to register it with a local city business license, you have to incorporate it through the state. And when you incorporate it through the state, you have to pull together what they call charter documents, your bylaws, your articles of incorporation, policies and procedures, those kind of things that you have to incorporate with the state.
Okay, and that's where your lawyer comes in to kind of help you with some of that?
Well, yeah, you can get a lawyer, you can get a consultant, you can get an accountant. A lot of accountants are very good at putting together nonprofit organizations and developing and creating those charter documents that you need to register it with the state.
So I have my charter documents together, and then is there anything else I need to do to actually form the actual nonprofit itself?
Well, having your board together, resumes of the board, having your some type of business plan, eventually rolling into a strategic plan. Depending on if you want to apply for your 501c3, some nonprofits don't have a desire to go through the process to file for a 501c3. If you're going to eventually, if your ultimate goal is to apply to the IRS for a 501c3 designation, then you're going to need the business plan, you're going to need a budget, organizational budget, you're going to need job descriptions, committee functions, all those type of things.
So you had to really outline it. And we hear a lot about 501c3. Now, we're going to take a break here, and I want to come back and talk about that, because I think a lot of people think I'm going to form a nonprofit so I can just get tax-free money, and I think it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Yes, it is.
So we're going to take a break right here, and we'll be back in a couple of seconds with Miss Duren. You are tuned into Legally Speaking, a public service of You and the Law. You and the Law is a nonprofit whose mission is to provide legal information and legal resources to empower you in your legal affairs. If you would like to have a question answered or a topic featured on Legally Speaking, feel free to contact us online at www.youandthelawtoday.org. You can also sign up there on our website for our mailing list, as well as follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Remember, with every right comes responsibilities, so know your rights and accept your responsibility. Welcome back. We're here with Miss Sheila Duren, who's talking about nonprofits and how to form them. And before we went to the break, Sheila, we talked about what they were, how they're formed, and the documents that we needed. So, and before we left off, we started talking about 501c3 status. Okay. So could you tell our audience exactly what is 501c3 status?
Well, 501c3 status is a designation that you apply and receive from the IRS, which means basically that you are exempt from paying federal taxes, usually local and state taxes on your income.
This money coming in?
Money's coming in. That does not mean that your employees don't have to pay taxes on the money that they earn, but it means that the organization does not have to pay taxes. And within the IRS, it is a section called 501c, and there are about 28 different statuses of 501c. 501c3 is for the nonprofits.
Oh, okay.
And there are a list of nonprofits that are eligible for that status.
So types of organizations that can have the C3 status.
C3 status, yes.
So how does it, is there any other ways that it benefits me other than not being taxed on incoming income?
Well, it allows you to receive tax deductible donations, whether that is actual dollars or in-kind donations. It allows you access to federal grants. Doesn't mean that you're going to receive a federal grant, but you cannot even apply for them unless you are a certified 501c3. It also provides you an opportunity to apply for certain certifications as an organization. Like, for instance, if you want to do affordable housing, you know, there are certain certifications that you may want to go after so that you can apply for state funds. There are certain other federal certifications that you may want to apply for. The Department of Treasury has a certified development entity that allows you to go after Treasury dollars, new market tax credits, those types of things that if you're not a 501c3, you cannot even apply for that designation.
Wow, sounds like it's a very important status to have. So is there any prohibitions on my operations if I have 501c3 status, things I cannot do?
Well, you cannot endorse a specific candidate. You have very strict limitations on lobbying. You have very strict limitations as far as religious activities, things such as that.
Okay, so that should be part of my research process when I decide an organization I want to have and what I want it to do.
Right. Then
I need to make sure that 501c3 status doesn't prohibit me from doing that.
That's correct. And really that becomes really a decision that you make with your board. And that's why I say, I tell people, go into the whole process from even organizing your nonprofit from the end, you know, to the beginning. Like I said in the beginning, some people work from the beginning and get to that status. But if you know that you want to, your ultimate goal is to apply for 501c3 status, in the formation of your nonprofit, there are certain things that if you know that I'm going to apply for a 501c3, and you understand in your research the types of things that you're going to need, the types of answers that the IRS is looking for, then if you know this and you put it in the beginning, include those documents and that information in the beginning formation of your nonprofit, it makes it much easier and cheaper when you are filling out that application for a 501c3 status.
Why did you say cheaper?
Well, applying for a 501c3, depending on whether you attempt to do it yourself or if you get an attorney or you get an accountant. And I would say that you need an attorney or accountant who has experience dealing with nonprofits.
Okay. That
it can cost you a pretty nice sum of money to do it. But the more information that you are able to put together and provide them up front, which cuts on the number of things that they have to do, which cuts their activities, it's much cheaper to do it. And then there are organizations out there that will help you and guide you in the process of filling out that application yourself. What I have found is that most people, when they apply and fill out that application themselves, not really understanding what the IRS is looking for, they tend to give too much information instead of just answering the questions and providing materials that they're asking for, and that too much information generates other questions and documents for the IRS.
So you need somebody with some experience.
So you need somebody to navigate you through, who understands what it is the IRS is looking for and can help you formulate your answers so that they can really understand who you are, what it is you want to do, how you want to do it, and who's a part of the organization.
So how long does that process normally take once I decide I want to take advantage of the 501c3 IRS status?
And you want to submit an application? It really depends on your answers. I have worked with organizations from the beginning. We submit the application. They may have one or two questions, and it can be a 3 to 6 month process. I have worked with organizations where they've already submitted the application, gave too much information, and then and triggered the IRS to ask for all these other things, and then they realize I got my head in over the water, and then have to come back in and go back in and talk to the IRS and find out what it is they're looking for, what it is they're concerned about, and then revise what they've done. And that can take up to 9 months. And it just depends. It really depends on what it is you're trying to do, how you're trying to do it, and what kind of answers are you prepared to provide.
Well, and I guess we're not hiding anything. We just want to answer the question that they want.
You know what? It's not that you're trying to hide anything. It's just like as an attorney, when you have a person on the witness stand, you only want them to answer the questions that are asked. You don't want them to provide any additional information. You don't want them to provide their opinion or anything other than
the bare facts.
The bare facts. This is what I've asked you. Anything that you have future plannings to do, leave it for the future. You can always go back in and amend, but right now you're just trying to get your basic 501c3, which is what your 501c3 is the same for everybody. And so you don't need some things. You don't need to answer. They didn't ask you that. But if you answer it, once you put it in there, once it's in the system, they have to respond, which means that it's going to generate another question, which means it's going to cause you to have to generate more stuff for them.
And I guess, and it may be stuff that you hadn't already thought out already. So I might have my 5-year plan, and I have the idea, but I hadn't thought about all the details because I brought it up. Then the IRS wants all the details that I don't have.
That's correct. That is correct.
So kind of save yourself a little grief.
That is correct.
I understand totally. Okay. Once we hear about 501c3s, everybody talking about I want to get some grants, get this money they talking about. So, is there a certain process for grants? Is there a way to fund this nonprofit 501c3 that I have?
Well, I will tell anybody that's starting a 501c3, while you're formulating, you need to be looking for money and sponsors.
So what places would I go to try to find these sponsors?
Well, that kind of comes from your board. As you're putting them together, look at your board and look at what their capacity is to generate income. It depends on if the nonprofit that you're starting, is it generated because of some outcry from the community? Did something happen that caused me to spin into action? Those kind of things. Are there organizations already out there that have funds to do what I'm proposing to do? Those kind of things. But if you're looking for grants to fund your nonprofit 501c3, that is so far down the road that needs to be your C plan. That doesn't even need to be your A and B plan. That needs to be your C plan, because those types of things don't happen overnight. And you can submit this great, wonderful grant application and still not be funded. A lot of times, your funding comes from who you know, who's on your board, your past experiences, all of those things. Doesn't even have anything to do actually with the application, but you have to have the application in there, and your application has to make sense. It has to clearly define who you are, what you've done in the past, or what your board members have done in the past, or what your staff has done in the past, and how you plan to do what you plan to do. And then, are you fiscally clear? Which means,
money, y'all.
Money. Have you had any problems with money? Has anybody on your board had any problems with money? Do you have certain things in place to make sure that it's not easily stolen or misappropriated?
So that goes back to your policies and procedures, setting yourself up,
and your board members.
Okay, so I guess the point to be made on that, ladies and gentlemen, is don't form a 501c3 just to get grant money, because it appears that is somewhere far down the road, and basically the bottom tier of your funding, even though they're out there. So let's just say that I was successful and I got a grant. What is the whole process for record keeping that one may need to be aware of?
Well, number one, you can, let me say it like this. It used to be 10 years ago that if you got funded with a grant, all of your money came down at one time. But that doesn't mean you had to generate a report, and you had to do activities within a prescribed outline that you provided to your funder. Now they do direct deposits, but you can't just spend money willy-nilly. You have to spend it according to your budget line items and things such as that. And so there are certain things you need a finance person. You need somebody that's responsible for when you spend, how you spend, how checks are generated, who signs checks, who do you return your receipts to, invoices. Do you have to do a procurement process? Is it a purchase order process? Is there a bid process? All of that's outlined in your board policies and procedures.
And who would come looking for that information?
The IRS is going to come looking for it, or your funder, depending on who you receive your funding from. There are monthly reports, quarterly reports, annual reports, and at the end of all of that, audits.
So how much typically am I looking at to form a nonprofit correctly?
Just to form it?
Yes. Form it, record keeping, and all that.
And is that including applying for a 501c3 status?
Yes, ma'am.
I would say you need to at least start off with about $5,000. You have to pay. There's a fee for 501c3, anywhere from $800 up to $2,000, maybe more, depending on what.
And that's the person who put the paperwork together for you.
That's what you have to pay the IRS.
Oh, let's pay the IRS. Okay.
Yes. And then depending on who puts your paperwork together, that can be anywhere from $300 to $5,000. Your registration with the state, there's a fee for that, generally somewhere between $160 to $300, $400. So just be prepared, whether you have it all at one time or you doing a little bit as you go. You're going to come up somewhere close to about $5,000.
But we're coming to the end of the show, if you can believe it or not. Time just flew by.
Yes, it did.
So are there any topics that we didn't cover that concerns nonprofits that you think that the audience should know about?
I think once you have formed that nonprofit, you have been designated a 501c3, that you then need to begin to look at your staffing. You then need to begin to look at consultants, advisors. You then need to look at potential partnerships and joint venture relationships. Okay.
Any organizations, because this show is all about resources. Any organizations that we should look for that can help us with this, or training classes or anything that you can tell us so we can go get more information?
Well,
we like talking to you. Where can we find you?
I was getting ready to say I would first give my email address. I can provide anybody that's interested a resource list. That's duren, duren, the number 50@gmail.com.
Okay.
There are pro bono legal consultants within the city of Atlanta.
And how would I find them? A search pro bono nonprofit? Or?
Yeah, and I have that included on my resource list.
And that's duren50@gmail.com.
At gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
And the Partnership Center of Atlanta, mm-hmm, included also on my list. But anybody can go in there and just Google startup nonprofit organizations, and mm-hmm, they will generate all kinds of information.
Great information. Again, thank you so much for being here. I know the audience benefited greatly from your expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. We talked about how we would form a nonprofit. We talked about the importance of your board and the people that you have on your board. It's not just your cousins and your mom. You need to have long-term goals for your nonprofits. Make sure that you understand what the need is that you're meeting. So it's more than a notion. to set it up and to have 501c3 status. Remember, Legally Speaking happens every Sunday at 6 p.m. And you can find us on www.youandthelawtoday.org. And until next time, remember, with every right comes responsibilities. So know your rights and accept your responsibilities. We'll see you next Sunday.